in the chat box and your NGO and your country, if you'd like to do that, so that we can see who's joining us here today. And if I could see what's going on in the chat, please put your name, your organization, your country, introduce yourself into the chat. We've got Ruzan from India, Marzia, Feminist Majority Foundation, we like you. ACT from Switzerland. Julia, Lebanon, welcome. Terry McGovern, New York. Yes, wonderful. Chad, Syria, Tunisia, Canada, Canadian, yes. Joy Adams, Myanmar. Wonderful to have you from Myanmar. South Sudan, Cyprus, Persons Against Torture. Thank you for joining us. UNA California, thanks. Rauya Sol from Lebanon, probably you know Lina. Nigeria, Liberia, Colombia, Beatriz, Thailand, Margareta Jones from NGO-CSW New York. Hi, Margareta. A whole group here from Ottawa, Canada. Great. Physicians for Social Responsibility. Thank you for being there. Liberia. Nigeria. Zimbabwe, wonderful. Female Prisoners Support Trust. Victoria Edmonds is saying hello to me. So we have a lot of people who registered for the event today. So please take a look at the chat. It's fun to meet each other in the chat. We do want to give people a little bit of time to log in. Sometimes they can't find the link that was sent to them. And sometimes their connections are a little bit poor. They're trying to adjust. Hey, great, we have Italy. We wish you well. Kenya. Bangladesh. Sharman, thank you for joining us. Fatima from Lebanon, Fatima Masawi. Tanya Fraser from Sierra Leone. Hey, a bunch of people from Lebanon. I wonder why that is. Hey, PPSEAWA from Thailand. Yes, we remember you well from the Beijing Women's Conference. That organization was one of the regional focal points. And today we're going to be focusing a lot on the importance of regional meetings in preparation for the Beijing Women's Conference. A little bit more from India. And this is the last one I will mention before we start our program today, which is Neelam Gaur from the Legislative Council of Maharashtra, India. Deputy Chairperson, welcome everyone. So I would like to begin our program today, but keep introducing yourselves as you come in. And that is not what I want to show you. Here's what I want to show you. Can you see me? Yes, thumbs up? Okay, thank you, Lina. So I'm Soon-Young Yoon. This is me with Malika Dutt in 1995. And actually in Korean, what may surprise some of you, our theme today is peace. And my name in Korean actually means peace forever. And I am the UN representative for the International Alliance of Women and co-driver of the Feminist and Women's Movement Action Plan, along with Melissa Upreti and Krishanti Dharmaraj of the Center for Women's Global Leadership. I'm co-moderating. Hello?
I think we need to change to the slides. We see a Word doc right now.
Oh, I don't know what happened there. Thank you for that. That's not what we want.
There we go.
Jessica, thanks so much for that. And interrupt me anytime if I'm doing something wrong. So this is me in Beijing with Malika Dutt. I am co-moderating the session today with Efua Acquaah-Harrison Owusu, who is a communications consultant at the ICAP at Columbia University. And this is Efua. So Efua, tell us what's going on here. I think you're getting some kind of an award, and there you were in a village. You should know that Efua was a star television journalist in her country. So Efua, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thank you, Soon-Young. Hello, everyone. As Soon-Young said, my name is Efua Owusu, and I am currently a communications consultant with ICAP at Columbia University, which is a nonprofit organization working in public health. Now, I have a journalism background, and one of my career highlights was winning the Ghana Journalists Association Award for Best Development Journalism for a story which was sponsored by the United Nations Development Program. So in this picture that you see, I'm receiving my award from the UNDP boss at the time. And it was for a story I reported on maternal mortality. Now, I also had the opportunity to host a show that gives young Ghanaians a platform to voice their opinions. It's called News Generation. So that's the other picture. This was a trip to Northern Ghana where we were doing a story on education in Northern Ghana. So these sort of events in my life inspired my interest in the United Nations and influenced my decision to work in the nonprofit sector. And I am very honored to be co-moderating this program with Soon-Young. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Efua. So today we have a really outstanding intergenerational dialogue about the UN Fourth World Conference on Women, that historic event in 1995, when 50,000 women and men, boys and girls, and we even had babies, we gathered in Beijing. I was one of the organizers of the NGO Forum for that conference, and my job was to coordinate rather than the regional planning committees that were so important to this process. We started almost 2.5 years before the meeting itself, and the regional meetings were really the rallying points and the places where a lot of the negotiations took place. I also coordinated our feminist and women's movements inputs into the UN negotiations that each of the regions had developed. This picture is interesting because we were at the Asia Pacific regional meeting, and we were told we were not allowed to demonstrate inside the UN conference venue. And we wanted to show them what the NGOs were advocating as amendments. So we had put all of our NGO amendments into a yellow book. And we put these yellow books on all of the seats of the NGOs seated in the room. And when Supatra Mastit, who was our convener, announced that we wanted to show them our NGO amendments, we all held up the yellow book, and then we just put them back down in the seats. So at that meeting, as you know, at 4:45 in the early morning, 189 countries signed on to the Beijing Platform for Action. And this group, our Feminist Women's Movement Action Plan, is about this document as a golden standard. But we really want to ground our framework in human rights and definitely into the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, or CEDAW, and the Sustainable Development Goals. And we believe if we put these three things together, a policy framework, a legally binding document, along with concrete targets, we will have the blueprint that we need to move forward. And today we're asking ourselves, can this legacy that we have, this very rich legacy, help us to address the crises of our times? Foremost, the climate emergency. Connected with that, the inequalities, racial inequalities, gender inequalities, and many, many others that we face. And finally, the threats to peace that we face, not only between nations and within our society and our cities, but also at home. So how can the UN Fourth World Conference on Women speak to the young generation, and how can we hold the governments accountable? This event is part of the series on Beijing Plus 25, centered around the three themes of the Decade for Women: Equality, Development, and Peace. We are all headed to CSW next year. We're headed to action coalitions and the Generation Equality Forums as well. We would like to thank our co-sponsors, all whose logos are there. The Center for Women's Global Leadership is there on the very right someplace. At Rutgers University, the Global Health, Justice, and Governance Program, in the School of Public Health, at Columbia University Human Rights Institute, at the Columbia Law School, and our partners who have helped us so much with reaching out to you, NGO-CSW New York, RightsLink, and Seroptimus. And Jessica, I probably missed one there.
I don't think.
Okay, we're good. And thank you to the invisible Jessica, Emily, and Nea, who are our conference team, helped manage more than the 566, I think, counted, registered at this event. We welcome those who are watching live on YouTube, but if you are in our Zoom room, you can also work with us in the chat. Efua, I am going to hand the program over to you at this point, and I will run the PowerPoint, so just tell me when to move on to the next one.
Okay, great. Let's start this conversation. It is my pleasure to introduce Lina Abou Habib, who is the director of the Feminist Advocacy Program. Lina has documented her activism journey in the Journal for Gender and Development, and I must say, it was very interesting to read as someone who was too young to be aware of the importance of the movement that is Beijing 1995 at the time. So Lina, welcome. Thank you for joining us. In 1995, you were working for Oxfam and attended the Beijing 1995 conference for them, so to speak, as part of the NGO forum. Can you please share with us what your role was during the NGO forum?
Yes, of course. It's lovely to be here, and it's lovely to be with wonderful friends, and particularly Soon-Young. It's always lovely to be with you, and Krishanti. It's just amazing to be here, and it's amazing to be talking about this. I mean, for me personally, 1995 and Beijing was a major turning point. And I will not start, I mean, for me, it was a turning point, but the starting point was what Soon-Young mentioned, which was the regional preparations. And the regional preparations in the MENA region, Arab states, was in Jordan, in Amman. And that picture that you see is from Amman, is from the from that event in Amman. I think it was, can't remember the date exactly, but this is us, me, and my feminist mentor, Moitri Mekupadai. That was the start of the Beijing, of the journey towards Beijing and beyond. By the time I had arrived in Beijing, that's just a parenthesis, I was pregnant, so there were actually two of us technically over there. But I think what it meant to me as a starting point in the genesis of this whole idea, and I have to be very candid and open, I had a lot of reservations. I was very, I wasn't trustful of such big processes as a young feminist back in the day. I thought, the real work happens on the ground. What are we going to do in China? The real change, our problems, we have to figure out what to do with our problems on a daily basis. We had to figure out what to do with, with the wars we were going through. We had to figure out what to do with authoritarian regimes, with all sorts of injustice in our region. Until we went to until that particular moment in Jordan, when this regional preparation was taking place, when I realized that actually this is an important process, and this process is, yes, exactly, November 1994. And what was happening in that place, thank you so much, Soon-Young, for finding these pictures. What happened in that particular place was that there was a clear rift between two kinds of entities trying to have their mark on that, trying to have their mark on Beijing. One was, back in the day, it was very common, Efua, quasi-NGOs, NGOs which were actually government NGOs, and we still have loads and loads of them. These are NGOs which actually repeat what the Arab governments say, incredibly conservative, you know the drill. And then there were many of us who actually wanted change, and what part of that change was change in governance, was change in the fact that, our position as women, and back then I have to say, maybe we'll talk about it later, but one of the issues that we did not address enough in Beijing, or perhaps that we focused more on, was gender as a binary, and I think we shifted from that since then. But what our discourse in Jordan against the Gongos was, this is part of a broader change, of a big change. This is part of a change in governance. This is part of dismantling each and every patriarchal policy, institution, religious law, etc. And it can't be just an add-on. And this is where, it was very clear to me that it's a bigger battle. This is beyond a few countries. This is all of us against all of them. And all of them, this is when also I realized, also as a young feminist, all of them, the others, the regimes, the autocratic regimes, the government, the people who have power and arms, etc., they had actually ganged up together against the feminists, and it was very clear. And they had, if I have just 1 second, they had a unified message, like education is very important, health to some extent, women participation in employment, yes, this is very important, but don't come to political participation. Don't get near anything related to family laws. That for me was a big push, and this is what made Beijing not only relevant as a moment, but actually relevant in terms of a feminist journey, in terms of a whole process of global plotting and working with global feminists from all over the world to basically face this monster.
Wow. Thank you for that. This sounds like the group was really, really, really important to you. How would you categorize the progress that has been made since then and now?
I don't know if you've listened to a wonderful podcast that we've had with our wonderful Anne-Marie Goetz and other feminists for the launch of the Gender and Development Special Issue on Beijing. And Anne-Marie was saying, and she really reflected the feelings of most of us when we got to Beijing, which is, we actually, and I think many of us share this sentiment, certainly I share it, once we got there and once we started working and once we started, moving around and engaging, etc., Efua, it felt like I'm just saying again what Anne-Marie said. It felt like being in, I died and went to feminist heaven is what Anne-Marie said. And this was exactly the feeling in September 1995. Like you've died and went to feminist heaven, because it was just mind-blowing, the energy, the collective, the sisterhood, the coming together, and also all the innovative approaches and so on. Where are we now? On the one hand, you want to say, why aren't we now in feminist heaven? What happened? And I think with Soon-Young a few years before, for the 20th anniversary with Beijing, and with other colleagues, and certainly I remember very well another conversation with our dear Charlotte Bunch. I was one of those who were very cautious of having a Beijing plus 20, and I thought, it's going to be impossible. Given what had happened after 1995 globally, it's going to be impossible to recreate that Beijing moment. That was certainly my conviction, and we shouldn't basically recreate that moment, because the conservative forces, the fundamentalist forces, etc., have become stronger since then. I've certainly departed from that idea completely. Not just because I wanted to change my mind, but because I changed my mind, but because actually that was a not so helpful way of looking at it. I think the Beijing was the way it was as a moment because we created it, because of all our collective energies, because of what we did there, what we did before, and how we carried it with us. Each one carried it back home. I think we were the creators of that moment. Yes, Beijing plus 25 is a different moment, and I think but nevertheless, we are still the creators. There is a most wonderful generation that is there to basically also co-create or even create on its own a new, different, better moment, and we've learned a lot. And I want to
Lina, can I jump in for a minute? I found this picture, and one of the stories we would love to hear from you is, like, you went there, you went to feminist heaven. So what did you do immediately after that? What was your immediate follow-up?
Okay, well, this picture, can I just go a step before just to explain this picture? The woman in the middle is somebody who has become my longtime friend. This is Rabia Nasiri from Morocco. And Rabia and a number of feminist colleagues from 3 countries, Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria, created something in preparing for Beijing called Collectif 95 Maghreb Égalité. And I'm sorry, in this region we're not very good at documenting everything that has happened or which is happening. But Collectif Maghreb Égalité was created around Beijing, and basically to prepare for a mega campaign to be kicked off with the aim of reforming family laws in the 3 countries of the Maghreb. And I remember, I think there were a couple of events that were happening with my Collectif Maghreb Égalité. One of them also, something happened and all the lights went out, and we were all sure that it was a plot or some conservative ultra-right movement didn't want us to talk, which, a few annoying stuff were happening, but we were there and we had all our, insane energy. But so after that, actually, Rabia and I continued our journey until now, and I've mentioned her extensively in the essay in Gender and Development, because we continued to work together with Beijing as our framework, with the Beijing Platform of Action as our framework. We, together with colleagues, we kicked off together regional work on reforming nationality laws in the region. Collectif Maghreb Égalité and its feminist members from the 3 countries, we actually did amazing, successful campaigns which in their countries, which resulted in reforming religious family laws, and they were unprecedented reform. You know, when the Morocco law changed, I'm taking a bit of time, Efua, I'm just answering Soon-Young's. I remember we were here in Beirut. Rabia happened to be in Lebanon because we continued to work in Lebanon, and she got the call from Morocco that actually it happened. The king has signed off on the reform of the family law, and this was like a couple of decades of daily work. It had become the life of so many women, so many feminist activists, you know.
Wow, very fascinating.
And to actually witness that moment was amazing. But what is happening now, and I really think that everything is a ramification or one way or another related to that moment in Beijing. We wouldn't have thought back then that you would be having a conversation around reforms of inheritance laws in Muslim family laws in the region. It is happening in the Maghreb.
Hold that thought. We'll come back. I'm sure we'll have a very interesting conversation later, but I'm going to move on now and introduce Krishanti Dharmaraj, who is the Executive Director for the Center for Women's Global Leadership. She's a feminist and a human rights activist with over 25 years of experience working to advance the rights of women and girls. She's the founder of the Dignity Index, a human rights measurement tool utilized to ensure equity and inclusion to reduce identity-based discrimination. Krishanti's passion for human rights and social justice began with her experience growing up in Sri Lanka, a country which experienced civil war. Now, Krishanti, you also attended Beijing 1995, and can you just tell us what your most inspiring experience was in Beijing?
Thank you very much. I wanted to really thank Jessica for pulling this together, and the Human Rights Institute at the Columbia University, UFA for moderating this panel, and Soon-Young, without you, nothing would be possible. And for the extraordinary panelists. And I have to say that when Lina was talking, I was getting goosebumps. The most extraordinary moment was actually what Lina talked about. It's like we had died and gone to the feminist heaven, right? And to me, it was extraordinary to feel the vibration of these different voices, right? And different ways in which women participated in Beijing. And when we say Beijing, it was really Wairo, which was the place where the NGOs were. And there were the policymakers and the grassroots activists. There were women from rural areas and cities, right? There was the global north and the south. And we were there in a way that really all our issues that we had worked on the ground, right, suddenly came into being from a universal standpoint. At that time, I was working for Amnesty International in San Francisco, and I had done women's human rights work preparing for women's rights as human rights for 1993 Vienna conference, where formally the UN human rights mechanisms recognize women's rights as human rights. So this was an extension of that, and the regional work that happened. And watching all of this work coming together in Wairo and in Beijing was the most powerful thing. It transformed, because transformation is not enforced. It is something that we feel. And I think that is important to recognize. It is also the place at the Great Wall. There are 3 people. That's a picture at the Great Wall. And I want to say that the 3 of us decided to bring women's human rights home to the United States, because we felt that there was a gap. There were women from the US who were engaged in the international arena to really do women's human rights work and to strengthen and expand and advance the global women's human rights kind of processes. However, that work was really not within the US borders. So there's Winnie Kusuma, Patty Chang, and myself. We were all from the Bay Area. We decided at that time that we were going to start a women's human rights organization in San Francisco that will bring in the ideas of Beijing, right? So I think it's important to recognize, while we talked about equality, development, and peace, it was held together by human rights. And what we wanted to do was to really bring human rights home and to really utilize that framework to address issues within the US borders.
So how exactly did you do that? And what did you do when you returned home from the conference?
Good question, thank you. As I said, we felt that really there was a gap and a separation between those who went from the US, and there were quite a number of women who went from the US to Beijing, right? We did not have a national agenda like most others did, right? And we were sort of split in many different ways, and we were fragmented, right? And while Hillary Clinton popularized women's rights as human rights in Beijing, that really did not resonate with everyone who went from the United States. So one of the things we wanted to do, and when we wanted to start an organization called Wild for Human Rights, Women's Institute for Leadership Development, really coordinated and led by women of color in the US, that included Indigenous, immigrant, and US-born women of color, predominantly African-American. We felt like we had to make a case to show how human rights was relevant, not only to our communities, progressive communities, but also to policymakers and funders. And they said they thought it was a good idea, but like we already had human rights. So technically, yes, we do. As humans, we have human rights. But the realization of that human rights was not real within the US borders. So what we did was really to take CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, that the US has not ratified, and it is still the single industrialized nation not to ratify this treaty. And we took it and we integrated into domestic policy in San Francisco, getting the city to pass legislation, making San Francisco the first city globally, actually, to integrate and implement human rights standards within city limits. So you see this picture in my testifying, and there were about 200 people who were supporting this work. Nobody was really understanding or understood what CEDAW was and is. So we had women testifying for each of the articles about how it was relevant to San Francisco. We provided data, and we said we wanted 3 things. And you could see below the city council members actually voting for it. And there were 3 demands, and they passed all 3 demands. One was to ensure that there would be a gender analysis within the city of San Francisco in the 64 departments that would look at resource allocation, service delivery, and employment. The second was that we wanted an independent body made up of both city folks, city policy people, as well as NGOs as a task force to implement CEDAW in San Francisco. Third is that we wanted a budget of $200,000 to start off the work. And we received all of that, and we were able to actually pass it and implement it. And it is one of the most extraordinary success stories still in the US in relation to implementing human rights within US borders.
That is extraordinary. Now, how relevant is the conference in today's time?
It is very relevant, and I wanted to, I mean, this conversation is about peace. And you already said that I come from, I would say, my experience in life has been both war and love. My parents were from the two warring fractions, and they had an extraordinary relationship that allowed me to really thrive in the midst of war, right, in a family setting. Right now, we are celebrating and recognizing the 20th anniversary of the Security Council Resolution 1325. This speaks of participation, protection, prevention, and actually relief and recovery. But the question is that at this given time, there's a conversation to yet water down with another resolution, this particular resolution that women fought hard to position. Right? I think we need to really recognize that at this moment, Beijing is more important than any other time of our lives. Let's think about how women really define peace. It is not just national security for women. It is peace at home. That means the eradication of gender-based violence at home. And in order to eradicate gender-based violence at home, we have to really address gender-based discrimination within the family, right? So when women talk peace, it is inextricably linked to violence in the home, to violence outside. There is a reason why women are the hardest hit in times of war. When women are not safe in times of peace, how can we expect them to be safe in times of war, right? Let's think about COVID. Right now with COVID, there's an inextricable amount of hardship that women are facing across, right? It is not only the violence in the home, it is harassment, it is multiple levels of kind of forms of labor that they are kind of embracing and holding, work at home, work professionally, unpaid and underpaid as well as paid work, right? And they are the ones who are the frontliners. 70% of the frontline workers are women, right? When we talk about peace and we talk about the importance of peace, I think it's important to recognize how women define peace. When women define peace, they bring about violence against women in the family, community, and by the state. They think about labor, paid and unpaid labor, and what they carry. They think about social protection because it is incredibly important to have social protection to ensure that women continue to not face inequality. They bring up sexual and reproductive rights and sexuality as fundamental to decision-making. And they bring up participation and leadership and engaging in governance. That is what peace means to women right now in the world. And unless that is really taken seriously by the Security Council, then it is a false dichotomy that we are promoting. And I think we talked about initially about the rollback and the impact that we are facing as women. But I wanted to take a slightly different edge on this. We are facing rollback is because we are tremendously powerful as women. We have not stopped. In spite of everything that is thrown at us, women are extraordinary and they're moving forward. So given that we had this conference in China, I want to paraphrase Lao Tzu, who wrote the Tao Te Ching, right? In an 8th verse, he said, the highest good is like water. I think women are like water. Water gives life to 10,000 things and does not strive. It flows in places men reject. And so it is called the Tao. And I would say, so it is called feminism. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. That was very insightful. I'm excited to bring in our youth representatives, Nicole Musimbi and Elvira Pablo. Let's start with Nicole. Nicole is the president of the Young Women Leaders for Peace chapter in North Kivu in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And this is a program of Global Network of Women Peacebuilders. Now, the goal of the Young Women Leaders for Peace is to empower young women from conflict-affected countries to be leaders and agents of peace. So Nicole really works to bring visibility to women's contributions to peace building and sustainable development in her community. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us, Nicole.
Thank you so much. I'm actually honored to be a part of this exciting and incredible discussion, and also hearing from incredible women who attended the Beijing. So it's kind of amazing, and I'm glad to be a part of this discussion.
And we are glad to have you. So tell us, what do you think the most pressing issue for young feminists is today?
So based on my experience, I think living in a country like DRC, when especially in eastern part of DRC, when women face many challenges. So I think sexual violence and so many abuse linked to women. So I think the most pressing issue for young women today is the meaningful participation of young women in all decision making processes, because in an area affected the conflict like Beni, where I'm currently living, young women are considered like only victims. They are, the work that they are doing on the ground, they are not, is not being, taken in account. And also the government, even though has signed different, agendas like YPS and WPS, they are not taken accountable, and they are not, considering the participation of young women. So, the pressing issue for young women today is their meaningful participation in all decision making, and also their protection, and also the conflict prevention. Yeah. So this is what I can call the issues of young women today.
Thank you. So why is it important to pay attention to the, why should young feminists pay attention to the United Nations?
So young feminists should pay attention to the UN, because it's first, inclusive, and it gives us the opportunity to participate, and also it gives us the important tools that gives us the opportunity to explore all our potential to contribute to the development of our countries, and also to create sustainable peace. So we should pay attention to the UN, because it helps us, and also it gives us the tools that we can lay on to do our work as a grassroots youth movement.
Now, what do you think Beijing +25 can do for young feminists?
So Beijing +25 is an important event which helps us learn from those who attended on this event, and also it helps us to learn from them, and to get empowered, and also to be encouraged from what the one who attended this event, and to know that what we are doing at the local level can have a global impact, and to have that hope, and also to have that that energy to continue doing the work we are doing.
Efua, can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
What are you doing here? in this picture?
Yeah, excellent question. So in this picture, we were gathering together with more than 300 young women and also men, students of university. So we were discussing about the impact of the participation of young people in the issue that they are facing at the local level. So after this conference, we had to create such a group to give concrete action that we should, as young people, focus on, and also give a solution to issues we are facing. So it was a kind of inspiring moment, and also a kind of moment which gave us which encouraged us, and also we had to hear from young women from different areas, because we were not only women from Beni, my city, but we also had to invite other young people from different cities. So it was like, yes, we know that, and from this event we identified some issues that we face at our local level, and also we recognize the importance and the impact of our action, that our actions create a positive change. So this was the most way that I got from this event.
Very, very inspiring. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to bring in Elvira Pablo. Elvira is a young Indigenous lawyer who graduated from the National Autonomous University of Mexico, and she is part of the Ayuk Indigenous Peoples from Mexico. Now, Elvira has experience in topics related to sexual and reproductive health rights, prevention of violence, political participation, and Indigenous peoples' collective rights. She does advocacy at the local, national, and international level, and has participated in the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues and the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. Currently, Elvira is the Policy and Member Engagement Officer for Latin America and the Caribbean for Girls Not Brides, which is the global partnership to end child marriage. Elvira is also participating in the advocacy process and is part of the Beijing +25 Youth Task Force. Welcome, Welcome, Elvira. Now, tell us, did you know anyone who participated in the Beijing Women's Conference Indigenous Peoples tent, and did they influence you in any way?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this wonderful conversation. I have learned a lot today, and as always, and it's really it inspired me a lot to hear our older sisters when they are talking about their experience and all the work that they have done, so we can be here, there, and continue working together. And yes, and actually I know Tarsila Rivera. I think you know also her. She is an Indigenous woman from Peru, and she was one of the women that were in Beijing in 1995. And well, she was there with other group of Indigenous women that were pushing also for the advancement of Indigenous women's rights and Indigenous people's rights. So I know her, and she's one of my mentors actually, and she has introduced myself to all this UN system, and she's working very hard with other in our organization to ensure that our Indigenous women movement has continuity, that the new generation also learn about how are the process going on, what they have done, what our political vision, our collective vision, our collective leadership. So they inspire us a lot, and we we work together. We usually do a lot of intergenerational dialogues and work, and that's why you can see the picture, for example. And I also know, well, I know Tarsila, who is a part of the Continental Network of Indigenous Women from the Americas. She's one of the founders. But also I know Mabel Bianco, who all of you know, and she's from Argentina. She's one also of the feminist leaders in the region, and she's also very inspiring.
Elvira, can I just interject for a moment? Excuse me. Can you tell us who they are? Because not everybody knows them. So in these pictures, point out where they are, Tarsila.
Okay, yes, for sure. Tarsila is here. She is from Peru. She is an
with a white black and white jacket on the right picture,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And Mabel, can you point her out to everyone?
And Mabel is here.
Yeah, but we can't see your pointer.
Yes, she is
in the left picture.
Yes, in the left picture, she is with a white blouse and blue.
Third from the right.
Yes.
Is that exactly her? Okay.
Yes, she's Mabel. And in the picture on the left, we are in the regional conference on women, the one that happened this year. So in that picture, we are with Maria Noel Baeza. She is the regional representative from UN Women in Latin America and the Caribbean. And my sisters here also, Norma Juan, she's from Conami, Mexico, Carolina from Colombia, Emma from Guatemala, Idalia from El Salvador, Nelly from Honduras, Mariela from Argentina, this is me. This is one of our sisters, Esther from Costa Rica. Margot,
you don't have to name all of them, we love them.
Yes. Like a very diverse group. Like we are Indigenous women from different parts of the continent in that picture, and also our allies like Mabel, and also there is Sergia. She is from the Afro-descendant women movement.
Great, thank you so much for introducing us to everybody. Now, can you tell us why you think it is important for young women and young feminists to engage with the United Nations?
Well, I think it's important for us because many of the agendas and the human rights agendas or issues are discussed in these spaces. So it's important for us to be there to voice our concerns, our issues, and also our priorities, and also to make sure that our particularities are considered when the member states are making decisions. Like I know what we as civil society, when there are governmental procedures, we cannot talk, but you can influence. No, we can do advocacy towards the advancement of gender equality. So I think it's really important for us to be there, and also, like I have seen, like if you are not in the space, and not everybody remembers to include your issues. So we as Indigenous women have a lot of things that we need to make sure that are considered, that we need to make sure that are voiced, and also in these spaces, because something that happened the first times that I went to the UN is like I listened to the member states presenting all the wonderful things that they were doing, but me and my colleagues get very frustrated because we know our countries and we know that not all the things that they were presenting are real, or not all the commitments are translating and are reflected in our dire lives and in Indigenous girls and women lives. So I think it's really important to be there to know what are the states committed to, what are they saying, and also to be able to push for the advancement of our rights.
Wow, that's great. If you're not in this space, no one will pay attention to your issues. I think that's a very important note to take away. Now, what is your hope for Beijing +25 and equality for youth?
Well, first of all, I think one very important thing is to recall the Beijing Platform for Action, because I think many of the things that are in that document, we have still not accomplished all of that. No, I like going back to that document, reading again, and thinking like we really need to continue pushing for that. The member states need to advance their commitment and also to take action to many of the things. So for me, my hope is first of all to recall the commitment of the states to that platform of action, to advance, and also to go further, like to go to have more progress, to include all the diversity of voices. As I have said, we need to ensure indigenous voices are there, but also LGBTIQ, people with disabilities, Afro-descendant, children, youth, adolescents, elders. I mean, all the diversity of women needs to be included in this advancement of the work. And also, I just think that we need to think how to really ensure these particularities to be considered in the next steps. How can we call the member states to reaffirm their commitment, or those who have not done it to do it? It was very interesting for me, for example, to see that in Beijing in 1995, in the platform, in the Declaration and Platform for Action, there is a point that says, like they call the governments to consider the ratification and approval of the ILO Convention, like the International Labour Organization Convention number 169, which is related to indigenous people's rights. So at that moment, they were calling to approve that document, and now that document is already approved. For example, Mexico is part of that, and it's a very key document for us as indigenous peoples, because it's very related to collective rights. And so I think that it's important to consider how much have we advanced, but we still need to strengthen that commitment.
Thank you so much, Elvira. I am so inspired by everybody, not just you, but everybody who has been on this call. Now, I would like to invite you, Elvira and Nicole, to have a chat and discussion with Lina and Krishanti. As you know, a big part of why we are doing this event is to foster intergenerational dialogue. So you have the floor to have a conversation. If there's anything the two of you want to know from Lina and Krishanti, probably expanding on their experiences from Beijing 1995, go ahead.
So I think I will be the first to ask, and I will have one question to both of them. So having attended to all of these, amazing conference, what will be your message to young women working on the grassroots movement?
Okay, I will take that on. So when returning from Beijing, one of the first things we did was really to have a youth organization called Young Women's Leadership Program to really ensure the understanding of human rights, right? So I think we, right now, I have to acknowledge that adults have not done so well. So we are, we recognize that, and I think we are accountable to those of you who are young, right? And we haven't really done a good job, right? When you think about climate change, we have really messed it up, right? So I think it is not that we have words, to me, I have words for you, but I think there is an equalizing space, right? It's recognition of where have we made mistakes and how do you gain from that, as well as where we have done right, right? And then us really paying attention to you in how you see the world, right? So I think there are three things I would request. One is more conversations that where we come together, because no one party really understands the situation. So there has to be kind of a collective space. Second is really learning from our mistakes, right? And third and fundamental, because of who I am, and I started at a very young age to do the work, that really utilizing a human rights framework that ensures the inclusion of everyone. It provides solidarity and it provides agency, actually would help us kind of cross the barriers that we are facing that are sometimes artificial. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me, Efua?
Yes, we can hear you.
If I can just add a couple of points, and I think more really.
Lina, I think we are having technical challenges with Lina. Hello?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's better.
Okay. The only thing I would add, Nicole, is, you know, I think the Krishanti talked about learning from mistakes.
Lina, we can't hear you. I think there's a bit of a technical issue for the internet. Hello, Lina? That's fine. Maybe try signing out and signing back in, and we will continue the conversation. Okay. Elvira, do you have a question for Krishanti? Or Soon-Young was also an integral part of Beijing 1995. So.
Yes, well, actually, and sorry for the noise. Yes, I have a question. What will be your advice, like, to continue working in this context? As we know, we have, well, we have the pandemic, but also we have, at least in Latin America, we see like the anti-rights movement also trying to push back for women's rights. So what would be your advice on how can we as women movement do it together? And also how can we ensure we are connecting and supporting each other? I mean, the feminist movement, the indigenous women's movement, these other movement, or the climate justice movements, to make sure that we are stronger together. Thank you.
Soon-Young, are you going ahead?
I yield the floor to you, Krishanti.
Okay, I will try to give it a shot. First of all, thank you, Elvira, for the question. And I think you on the ground are already doing the work in a way that is genuine and responsive to the people on the ground. The impact, whether it's in Mexico or in the rest of the world, the rollback and the attack on women's rights is massive. We have just watched Poland around reproductive rights and roll back. And in each of the countries right now, including in the United States right now in our Supreme Court. So I think it is universal. The attack is universal and it is coming in different waves, right? And what COVID has shown us is that the way in which women were facing inequality and discrimination has been amplified. Right now, it is exposed to the level of discrimination and violence and harassment that we face as women. So part of what it is I think we need to really recognize we have to come together. This is not the time for us to have either a kind of separate ourselves in groups, right? The feminists have to recognize the role of indigenous women's movements and that leadership, and we have to embrace that. Because, right, feminists have to recognize the role of, in the global north, the role of women of color, right? And it is not that feminists have been the dominant, but as feminists, we have to expand and bring in intersectionality. And I think that is very fundamental to our work. It is very important at this time to recognize sexual and reproductive rights, because the attack on women comes in through that door. And we cannot ignore and say, oh, it is not about us because we are not in that age group, or it is not about us because we are not that part of that particular group of sexual orientation. That is not us. We are not lesbian. We are not bisexual. We are not trans. That it cannot happen anymore. I think our power is in our unity. right? So I think that is fundamental. It is also really paying attention to the ground, because policymakers and those of us who are in international policymaking arena can go off on our own and build beautiful policies and push on agendas, but they are of no use if they cannot be implemented on the ground. So the connection between the ground and those who are advocating for policy has to be stronger and streamlined more than ever. Thank you.
Can I jump in here for a moment just to follow up, and then I'll give Lina the floor. One of the interesting realizations, I think, that happened in Beijing 25 years ago was the importance of recognizing the strength of diversity. So one of the slogans that we used in the NGO forum was unity with diversity. What I have seen in 25 years is that we need to return to that idea, recognizing that we have actually been divided horizontally within the women's movement. So as Krishanti was saying, those of us who deal with sexual and reproductive health and rights are not the same groups talking about climate emergency, for example. And we need to break the silos across our movement between those different parts and to develop a framework which allows us to do what we did in Beijing, was to recognize that those issues are also our issues and how we are connected. So let's seek that in Beijing 25 in the coming months as we head to CSW. Let's seek the framework that we can build from where we start, but connect to everyone else's issues, because that will be our strength. Unity with diversity, not only of the people, but of the issues that we each hold very dear to us. Lina, you have the floor.
Okay, can you hear me? Is the question. Okay, actually, this might be a good opportunity to tell you that this is one of the reasons why most young people have been on the streets in Lebanon since October 17th, because simply things are not working, simply because there's corruption, because anyway, no, I'm not going to talk about Lebanon, but only to say, to add to what Krishanti was saying. What I would add is perhaps after quite a lot of being ambivalent about it, but these spaces are ours, you know, are yours and ours. Beijing plus 25 is basically ours, and we make it and we shape it, and we, you know, it's our energy, our strength, and also our struggles locally. And talking about struggles locally, I think the most important thing is, and I think one of the takeaways of Beijing is the fact that we were grounded where we were, and we were able to make actions beyond our position, our geographical position. And I think that was extremely, extremely powerful. And the other thing that I would add is, you know, the world has changed during these past 25 years. And we have learned a lot during these past 25 years. And certainly looking at the region, at the MENA region, we won't take it anymore. Young people will not take it anymore. Young women will not being targeted all the time, being killed all the time. We simply won't take it anymore. We will not take corruption anymore. And again, I agree with Krishanti. It's not about us telling you about the now, because the now is basically yours. But it's about saying that some of the things proved incredibly helpful and incredibly useful. Unity and diversity. What Soon-Young was saying is basically still remains valid and powerful. And secondly, I think, again, I want to go back to that issue of space, being there, all of us united beyond our entity, whatever it is that drives us apart, whatever it is, it's not as important as, you know, the big monster that we're all fighting for. And then my last point is, you know, this is part of challenging and dismantling all of patriarchy. I mean, for me, Beijing plus 25 is about, achieving our collective rights, this cannot be done unless we dismantle the despots and the criminal regimes here in the region. So it's basically looking at all of this as one fight. And the silos that we were talking about were basically because we might have been looking at separate struggles. We might have been looking at let's focus on this first, and then we'll come back to that. Actually, this is not working very much. It's not really working very much. This is one package, that we have to fight. And perhaps the last thing that I've always been incredibly upset, and I think Soon-Young and I had this conversation several times before. It's really upsetting when you see, and it's concerning, and it's aggravating, and it makes you angry when you see the conservative right in their modus operandi in these spaces. And whatever it is, if there's one thing to learn from them, is that they work collectively. That's the one thing we need to really learn from these monsters, is that they work collectively in great, and they work in harmony together. Our regime,
and they work with young people.
And they work with young people, and they know how to talk with young people. And our regimes in the region, they would stab each other in the back. They are the most corrupt, etc. But when it's time to put up a united front against us, they do it, and they would put a united front against us. So I think, let's learn from this formidable adversary that it's actually one block, and therefore we need to be able to, get to that point where we're talking in unison. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Now, maybe a question to all of you. What key message do you want people to take away with them, especially heading into the future?
One sentence, guys.
I can start. For me, something very important is also the cultural change. So I think we really need to work together, like we as individuals, but also with our communities, with our families, with our governments, with all the spaces where we are, to build together a cultural change. We know that there are many cultural norms that are and many harmful practices that are affecting women and girls. So we need to work together to change that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elvira. Krishanti?
Peace beyond the absence of war is the realization of women's human rights. That is economic, social, cultural, and civil and political and environmental. Thank you.
Great. Nicole?
Yeah, beyond working together, I can say also empowering young women and upskilling them, and also give them space to use their potential to create sustainable peace, and also participate in the development of their nation. So upskilling young people, give them space to participate and to give their energy, and also to innovate, because they have also the energy to innovate and to participate in the sustainable peace and also the development of their countries.
Thank you. Lina? You're on mute.
So what they all said, and just one thing, we're not going anywhere. And once we're gone, there are others, and then there are others, and then there are others. So patriarchy might think it's sustainable, indefinitely sustainable, but honestly, it's not.
Thank you. Soon-Young?
I will just thank the panelists at this point. I think it's been a great discussion. I will turn to a closing of our agenda here and remind everyone that besides Beijing 25 and UN 75, this is the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, which we helped found, by the way. all of
Yes.
you. We are celebrating the 20th anniversary of UN Security Council Resolution 1325. And there is a way that you can contribute your voice to that celebration. So we have started a book called Thank You, United Nations, which is an online book. It is owned by UN 2020, which is a group that I belong to. We have 3 chapters, and one of them is to celebrate this 20th anniversary. Jessica, can I ask you to put in the chat the link to the chapter for the online book so that people can see what it looks like? We now have 400 plus contributions to the book in its entirety, and it has been viewed by 13,700 people as of a week ago, so it's going to be fun to do that. Our next event is going to be on the 2nd of November, which is a US musical meditation on women's suffrage and the fight for intersectionality. Jessica can answer any questions you might have about that event, and of course we're heading for CSW.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks for that. So in closing, I would like to say just a few words which I can't help sharing with you, which is about safety. Krishanti and I have both lived through wars. And in the health pandemic that we are facing now, we do feel as though we are in the middle of a war. But I realized that there is a big difference here. And that is that when you are in a war, you think it will never end. You don't know when it's going to end. In this situation, what I wanted to share is what I told my daughter the other day, which is that unlike war, the health pandemic that we are horribly living through at the moment is going to end. It will end, and we will have a vaccine. There is an end in sight. We can look perhaps to summer or fall of next year. So all of you, please just remember that it can end. Make every sacrifice that we need to make in order to survive to that end. And we will all be able to gather in person, probably CSW of 2022. So with all of us from fwmap and co-sponsors, thank you to our panelists. We're going to say goodbye to each other at this point, and we'll do what we did last time, which was, you can wave if you want, but for those of you who have access to chat, sorry for those of you on YouTube, but you can put something into the comments. Can you think of one word that would express how you're feeling right now? So use the chat box and let's hear, how are you feeling right now?
And thanks to everyone who joined via chat. There was very, very inspiring conversation going on there. So thank you all so much. And thanks for participating. Everyone is feeling inspired, hopeful, grateful, invigorated, encouraged. Grateful. Thank you all so much for joining. We are inspired by you as well.
We are empowered. Yeah, empowered. And I'm going to let you do it because you're good at it.
Looking for new world for my children. That is great. Very helpful. This is from Judy Chiang. She said it's very helpful to understand how important Beijing Plus 25 is. Motivated. Thank you from Cyprus. Kasha Slavna says love. Nancy Gale says cultivating compassion. Energized, very inspired and optimistic. Really informative, important session. And someone says harmony. Thank you for your experience sharing. happy to be with committed women from around the world.
And Soon-Young says, unfortunately, we really have to close this meeting. It is precisely the time that we need to say goodbye. So thank you to Efua and to our conference team and to all the panelists. This has been recorded. You will find it on YouTube, so send your friends there, and we'll see you next time.